Well, part 2 of the July 2017 update on LifeGiving Farm, the farm that gives us life. And I'll do kind of a quick tour of the old garden biodiversity that I didn't show you yet. And when I do the long tours with people here, I always start out showing them ground like this. This was the condition of our whole place when we moved here in 1985. A lot of bare ground and stuff called knapweed, you see there. And no trees. All the trees around here, except for some of the trees along the road, we planted, or else they were planted as volunteers by the creation itself as it blew the seeds from the other trees through the winds. And all of those big poplars and cottonwoods and all of this, and the quake and aspen we planted. There's the National Bison Range over there. And so we'll go around looking at some of the highlights. I don't want this to be too long. There's a rain barrel. And one of our several apple trees, the Northern Spies. Sometimes I remember the names of these things, the names that people accept anyway. We'll have a good amount of apples from that one this year, as you see. So we'll walk around the old playground. Hardly ever any children playing here anymore these days. Our grandkids are grown up for the most part now. And so you've got the apples there, and a couple of our many hazelnut or filbert trees, and these two very large ones in the backyard, and we'll look at some of the others in the garden. And their nuts are starting to grow now. There's some. Sometimes they're hard to see till you stare at them for a while when they're little like this. When we get to the other trees, they're easier to see, the big ones. These are some moderate size hazelnuts. Another hazelnut tree. Grapes. Got 4 kinds of grapes growing around here. Mostly these Concords, and the other one that we're in abundance with is the red seeds, so tiny they call them seedless, but they're not seedless, or else they'd be some kind of mutants. GMOs or something. Now these are just, they have real tiny seeds, these red grapes, when they mature, and you don't even notice them hardly. You can eat them, swallow the seeds, it doesn't matter. And those will be ready in September. some time. Here's our part of our abundant garlic harvest in the drying and processing stage. We'll get to that. Here's our oldest pear tree. Small European red and green pears. The other pear trees we have are Bartlett's. And they're down here. But anyway, I'm not going to go down to that part today. It's turning into a hot day. And so these are our juice apples. Related to Macintoshes. Don't know the exact name. But we'll have a good amount of these wonderful juice apples. And there's Bartlett. We're not having a lot of pears this year. It's usually totally loaded with pears. But we had a frost at the flowering time that interfered with the development of the pears. But not so much the apples, as you can see. They made it through, and their timing was a little different with their flowers. So here's maybe we'll do a little panorama of the old garden. And look at some of the details, not everything. Here's the compost. That's important. This is the new compost we have on the left, and then you can see we used up the old one this year. There's some strawberries. They're done for the year. And we get another view of the grapes and another apple tree. The applesauce apples that are yellow, and they're actually almost ripe. They come early, you know, end of July, unlike other apples are September, October. But the applesauce ones, they'll just start falling off the tree, and then you know they're ready. A lot of times they look like they're still green, but they're ready, and they make delicious applesauce. Here's one of my favorites, the Honey Crisp apples. Beautiful, delicious. We'll go over there maybe later. And the tomatoes are interspersed with, as you can see, lots of catnip, and it attracts pollinators. But tomatoes are self-pollinating. We just let the catnip grow because we welcome pollinators that spread around everything. And it's more than just the honeybees. You get all kinds. I've got a nice video on pollinators. I'll put it on the website someday. And so there's asparagus in here too. Asparagus picking season is basically May, the whole month of May, sometimes late April. And into early June occasionally you still have some. Beautiful place. I just Love everything here. It's hard to leave home when you live in a place like this. So besides the catnip, you see the mullein, and it's those yellow flowers of the mullein that have the medicine in them. You'll see there's also plantain and dandelions here in the mix, and then we plant basil in with the tomato. Let me see, is that further down? We'll show you some basil. And the tomatoes are getting started. There's some right in there. Here we go. And there's the greenhouse. Part way into the ground. Now there's a whole video already on the greenhouse and the rocket stove in it, so I'm not going to do that today. But there it is. Goes down 2 feet underground. And again, the plants growing together with a lot of diversity. Here's cabbage and dill and squash and zucchinis back there. Everybody's got zucchinis, right? And there's some yellow squash getting started. It's hard to look in that little window and see things. There they are. Okay. And our green grapes that almost died once when they were in a different location. Then we moved them here to get more sun, and they're definitely reviving. And we should see green grapes in a year or so. Now that the plant's healed and starting to thrive here, this year especially, it's come back. These flowering white flower plants here are the buckwheat, that once you start growing buckwheat, if you let it go to seed, it'll spread everywhere. The critters move seeds around. They get caught on things and people carry them around. So buckwheat puts nitrogen in the soil and attracts pollinators. We like it. There's a sunflower. Just volunteered to grow here. There's little Max. And lots of lettuce. It's doing pretty good this year. Carrots, kale. Did we finish off the spinach? I guess so. There's a little mustard there. And, you know, a lot of these we have growing in other places too. So everything's mixed together and in different locations. And it works that way. And there's well, they're relatives of these onions. Are in there. Onions and they're not chives or something else. Okay, and then we've got some beets here. Let my shadow get out of the picture. Dill. And I'm going to walk around this way, I think, and look at these beautiful filberts. These are our most prolific filbert trees with big healthy nuts on them, and they're off to a very good start and will get bigger and bigger. And let's see, I don't know what I'm pointing the camera at half the time. Okay, there they are. Then you gotta move it off of things and back on to get some focus. Yeah. There you go. They're so wonderful just roasted. You don't need to add anything to them. The filbert nuts. Oops, sounds like my dog scared up a bear, minding its own business. Well, looks like I got a bear up a tree. I think I will put the dogs in the house and let the bear come down. Let them know everything's okay. They must have really surprised it. Oh, he's gonna come down anyway. Let me move over that. Foo, come back. Come back here, Foo. Let's go, doggies. Foo! Foo, no! Foo, let him go, Foo! Come here, Foo! Foo! No! Foo! Well, that was a little excitement. Where were we? Yes, the beauty of the nuts. The bear got away and the dogs are calming down. No wildlife was harmed in the making of this motion picture. A little disclaimer there for you. Yeah, it's just life on the farm. It happens every day. Bears come back, eat what they want to eat, and then the dogs notice them, and then they run for about 5 minutes, and then they're done. Okay. Okay. Over to the peas. A lot of peas in a little small space here. We've been picking them for a while and they keep producing more. And then here's some of the peppers. We saw some peppers on part 1 in the other part of the garden, the newer part. And here's some that we just rotated with the red corn, which was here the last couple of years. Now the red corn's out where we were the other day. So we've got peppers, tomatoes, and more tomatoes and peppers in here. Got cherry trees all along the fence. And then one big cherry tree followed by the Honeycrisp apples over there. The old strawberry patch probably could use a little weeding, but you know, they're doing fine. They like the company, I suppose. There's even some mint growing in the strawberry now. That came up last year. Some spearmint. It grows all over the place around here. We have 4 different kinds of mint growing. 2 English mints and then the native spearmint and peppermint, also native. And they grow at different places around here where we live. And I discovered that one of our plants that, you know, another plant that people just call weeds, is a beautiful medicinal plant called Purslane. You probably, many of you have seen this around your place. They grow low to the ground and spread out. Got all kinds of nutrients, and it tastes like lettuce. It's a succulent. I'll find some more. It's growing all around here. It's got the antioxidants and the all those other good things that you hear people talking about in health food discussions now. What's that other stuff? I'll give it to you later. It's wonderful. So we're starting to eat this like solid. Purslane. I don't know where it came from, but it's here. Hey, get out of there, Max. Go. That's right. Good doggy. Lying down. That's the way you do it. Okay. You stay down. And plantain. Let me find. There's some more peppers and some squash that just kind of came up in the pepper patch, and we're okay with it. And I'll have to cut down some of the little volunteer cherries eventually. some melons in here, and cucumbers coming up. Well, in a few weeks, when everything's bigger, I'll show them to you again. Yellow squash. There's a yellow squash. Once Max thought that was a ball, and he was reaching with his mouth to grab it. I said, "No, Max, that's not a ball." Training a puppy again. It's been a while, but he's starting to catch on. And back to the tomatoes. I was going to find some plantain and show you that. Here's some. Wonderful medicine, heals wounds. You can tell it by these flowering heads on the long stalks. When you're looking for some, yes, find those. And then the leaves have striations going the length of the leaf and not crosswise or widthwise. All of their lines go the length of the leaf. There's skinny plantain and the fatter kind there. Another kind of plantain. And oh yes, and here's some of that basil growing in with the tomatoes. They're excellent companion plants. They do really well together, help each other out. There's some of that plantain, the little mullein in the middle. Well, Honey Crisps again. They'll be ready in September, and you can tell they're going to be big apples. This is just the middle of July, and look how big they are already. Now we should go take a look at the hugelkultur bed and get an update on that. Gilbert's again. So we're approaching the hugelkultur bed. You could see next to that lumber stacker thing there. And I still only have one hugelkultur bed in production. I'll get a few more of them next year ready. They're a lot of work to get them started. And I'm still teaching. That takes a lot of time. Teaching, writing, extra work of all kinds. And I'm going to retire this coming school year. And then I can just do this all the time. Fantastic. So you can see the hugelkultur bed is just teeming with life. Most of it wild, and the cultivated stuff is on the top. Now, I already have videos and other posts about the hugelkultur. If you want all the details, just scroll down from here on the Learning Earthways blog page. And some of them are in my YouTube account page too. But I will just show you the update of what it's doing now. And as you can see, the dominant feature plant is the comfrey that kind of holds the sides together and puts nutrients in the soil. I just cut some of the comfrey down on the sides, as you see there, and I'll take some of it into the compost and some of it on the next hugelkultur bed that I'm building over there. It's going to mix into that one. And we'll look at now what's growing now. And of course the catnip again loves the hugelkultur bed. Everything does. Any seed that lands on here just wants to thrive, and so I have to constantly thin things out. And so you can see a mixture of open space and crowding, but everything's green and vibrant. It's a balance between providing shade and allowing enough sunshine to get through for the crops. So let's take a look here. The new item we have this year is beluga, they're called black beluga lentils. Let's look right at them here. Delicate little plants in the legume family, nitrogen fixers, they call them, and wonderful to eat. We've grown sprouts with the seeds we got more seeds. One of my dear friends gave us a bag of them, and we made them into sprouts and then planted some, and delicious, wonderful, and good for the soil. Don't need that little grass growing right there. Okay. I planted some tomatoes, but I also have volunteers in here. And we have volunteer potatoes that came out of chunks of potato that were in the compost, like this one and that one there. And let's walk around this way. So I planted some squash, but some also volunteered to come up. It's hard for me to turn the volunteers away and tell them, you can't be here. I'm in control. I just don't like doing that. But I trim back these leaves, and there's one of our delicata squash that I planted coming up. And so the shade keeps it from drying out too much. And then eventually when the logs in there get waterlogged, we'll have moisture coming up from there too. Here's some Purslane that popped up next to that pepper. Purslane again, and we welcome that. There's some in there too. I can't see very good. Okay, there it is. Purslane. Wonderful. It has tryptophan in it. That's one of the other things. Tryptophan, good for reducing stress and helping you feel good mentally too. Here's a little volunteer squash that I keep having to trim everything around it so it'll get enough sun. And we got some volunteer things that look like basil, but they're not. And or maybe there's some other kind of variety of it, and they're flowering now. And if anybody knows what that herb is, I'm thinking it's a variety of basil. Let me know if you know. And there's some pollinators on the catnip flowers and on the basil flowers. Yeah, beautiful. There's those. Well, I don't know if I should even call it basil. It's in that mint family and looks like basil. There's the fully grown flowers, look kind of purplish. There they are. Last year this area was covered with mustard greens and flowers. We had to cut back on the mustard a bit. Peppers again, tomatoes. Potatoes. And peppers, and there's that lentils again. So this is the hugelkultur for this year. Oh yes, and carrots. And there's some beets in here somewhere. There's the beets. Yeah, they didn't all come up. And they're kind of heavily shaded. And there's some carrots. And I saw some carrots over here, yes, underneath the squash. Carrots. So, still loving the hugelkultur. You can grow a lot of food in a small space. Or carrots. Squash. Delicata there. Okay, and this is a healthy looking tomato. And to the end here, little tomato that almost died in the greenhouse, and we just stuck it in here. It's like 3 inches tall and looked like it was dead, and now it's thriving. Nice. And one more squash. And lots of comfrey. So we'll work more on this one, the next hugelkultur bed. And hope to finish it up in the early fall and along with my other two. Last thing I'll mention before we shut this one down is over there on the fence beyond the cherries, I've got 2 walnut trees. There's the little walnut tree and the big one. They have a hard time with Montana winters, but now they're pretty well established and may start giving us some nuts again. 2 years ago they gave us about 15 nuts. They had a good year. Not too harsh of a winter due to the climate warming. And then we had a hard one, a lot of freeze, dead branches. And now they're looking good. I'm thinking next year, walnuts. We'll see. And I'll close with the mountains and hills around here. I think the bear came back. Heard some branches cracking. Okay. mountains where our water comes from. Over there. The snow keeps melting on those all the way into August. And then September, usually late September, October, they start getting more snow. It's a couple of fires over that way now, and a little haze, as you can see from smoke. All right, that's the update.